Hello, hello, and good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Hope you are enjoying that sunshine that is starting to creep on over. We are just going to give it a couple of seconds so folks can join us for this webinar. If this is your first time, hello, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASPDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicated to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Cute dog, cute dog. Did you like that, Laura? I just had to throw a shout out for my dog, Pedro Pascal.
Oh, guys, we just got to see Sadie's new little baby before the show. Oh, adorable little face. So that's what we're talking today because we're going to be talking some heavy duty stuff today. So we're going cute doggy, cute doggy. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Welcome, welcome. Happy summer. I think we are in the midst of summer right now with everybody traveling. So, like I said, I'm so happy to see people still hanging out on the show during the summer. I always know our numbers are going to go down, but man, you guys are hanging in there. Okay, with no further ado, because we got a lot of topic we're going to cover today, let's get started. Okay, as always, I always use this to announce my upcoming webinars. You see a new one on your screen. So, cash flow model instruction and template provided. This is something that I developed. Actually, I developed a very more elaborate one, if you will, during my CFO turnaround times. Like I mentioned last week, that I would come into companies that were in trouble. That means they already had cash flow issues. These were $1 million companies. So it was same thing as you guys, just more zeros. That's all. But they had cash flow issues. And of course, they couldn't get any loans. And so I had to manage the cash flow to the infinite detail. Like, can we make payroll next week? Right. So I created a system a bit more elaborate than the one I'm speaking of. But then I actually created it in a kind of smaller version without the complexity to that still works perfect for small companies, all companies that need to manage the cash flow. And everybody does, guys. You just need to. That way you don't end up in a situation where you look up and you don't have the cash that's needed. CFOs never like surprises. We want to know so we can do what I call course corrections. We can say, oh, okay, this is coming up. A lot of times in, corporate America, as you probably know, the course corrections are extend vendor payments a little bit longer, right? That's the hard truth about it. But nevertheless, knowing what your cash availability is, as well as forecast on future sales, is key. So I decided to bring this webinar back. It's been some time since I've done it, mostly around the COVID time. There's also the template that I created. We'll be going through it. I'll give the template to everybody that goes through the webinar because you got to go through to understand how to use it. I may be repeating it again. Like all of them, it's not recorded. I'm going to kind of see how it goes. I also have a intro to another new webinar I'm going to pull up in August, which is an audit that you can do within your company. Then I've got my Sole Prop LLC and S Corp, which I do every single month. And I'm bringing back the charging your customer sales tax, talking about e-commerce, because there's a lot of confusion in that as well. Oh, I went the wrong way here. Or something happened to the next slide. Oh, the next slide. Here we go. Yeah, that talks about, oh, and we also have the Ask an Expert series that's coming up as well. So we got upcoming shows. We got Xiomara today. I didn't take that off. Next week, we got Diana is a career coach and speaker. And the cool thing about Diana is she, not that long ago, she'll tell the story, but she went from being in corporate America for a long time and starting her own company, and she's doing extremely well. So I wanted her to talk about her company, give us some, advice on coaching that she does, as well as talk about the transition period between being in corporate America to an entrepreneur. What was different, what she had challenges with, what she found benefited her from her time in corporate America. Those are always fascinating discussions as well. And I've been wanting somebody to come on and talk about marketing, and Raymond coming on to talk about the digital marketplace. He's really knowledgeable, guys. This is going to be a great discussion. And I'm working on the August lineup right now. So, as I always say, if you or anyone you know wants to be a guest on the show, please reach out to me. Okay, we're going to start Lori's Corner. You ready for Lori's Corner? So, what I have been talking about a lot, and you hear me say it in different ways, and it's on my mind quite a bit. I feel like right now it's the perfect storm for small businesses in relationship to the growing complexity in government laws and regulations. I talk about this with the different laws, with the legal structures. We're going to talk about HR laws today. There's business license for home occupancy. You're sitting at your kitchen table selling on Etsy, you need a business license. There's the cottage food industry. There's sales tax, whether you're selling in state or out of state. It's just a growing complexity in all of the laws and regulations that the smallest of small companies selling at the farmer's market need to have an awareness about. But at the same time, there is an increased messaging. And when I say messaging, I'm meaning across all avenues, social media a lot. Also, other advisors, I got to say, that are saying there's a simple solution for these complex matters such as accounting, tax, finance, HR. Get this: QuickBooks sync with your bank account. It mysteriously does everything. TurboTax can file the most complicated tax returns. So it just gets, oh, we just need this simple solution, and it will work for all companies, independent of the size, independent of what state they're in, not even accounting for the fact that different states have different laws, independent of whether they're a sole prop, an S corp, taxes an S corp, or an LLC. So what I keep seeing is, and it breaks my heart, to be honest with you guys, because the small businesses are left holding the bag, if I can use that expression, because they're being sold a bag of goods. I'm going to continue with the bag, that there's this simple solution: buy this software, get this, go to LegalZoom, do that, and it's all going to be mysteriously great. And then what happens is they soon find out, which I know because I am the one that gets all the clients that get nasty letters from the government. Oh, you just got audited for this. Nope, you didn't have this form filled out. Nope, you have to pay these fees and penalties. And so it just is really challenging. And I express to small businesses every single day. And this is one of my new favorite words, and this is where I'm going to end my little spiel, and that is on the word discernment. The word discernment has become very important to me. We have to have discernment about what makes sense in our company. We have to have discernment on listening to someone giving advice on social media. Do they have the background? Do they have to do you understand? We even have to have discernment when we're hiring professionals. I had somebody just yesterday that hired a lawyer to do the legal structure, a tax person to do the tax filing. They weren't in sync, causing a whole lot of problems because the lawyer understands the legal structure, the tax person understood the tax, but they weren't in communication. So we really have to have discernment where we step back and we rely on our own ability to understand, our own ability to research, our own ability to find the truth that matters for us. So, with that, that is going to lead us into the conversation that we're going to talk about today. I'm very excited to have a reoccurring guest that's never going to get away with not having to come on the show a lot. I'm already going to say that. Xiomara Palma is the founder and CEO of Solvit HR, a boutique HR consultancy built specially for small businesses. With over 15 years of hands-on experience, Xiomara is a certified HR consultant who has worked across a wide range of industries, helping business owners navigate the complexities of compliance while boosting their profitability through their people productivity. Xiomara, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lori. It's always a pleasure to be on.
I didn't read your long bio. I figured it would come out as we start talking,
No,
but know,
you hit nail on the head. I'm here for small businesses. I do what I do because I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I really feel for small businesses being the most vulnerable out there, not really having an HR department to lean on with a lot of these laws. So
It's so true. I tell people all this time when I speak about you, and I truly mean it, is that, I've been around a lot of HR people. I've been around a lot of business people. I've got a lot of time in this, right? You're one of the few that really know what they're talking about. You stay on top of it, you know what you're talking about. But what I love is you don't just regurgitate laws and words that people don't understand. You explain it and you adjust it to their existing situation. And that is not usual in an HR person. So we're very fortunate to have you at the SBDC. Shout out. She's an advisor as well as I am at the Pasadena SBDC. So you can sign up for a webinar. It was just put in the chat. You can have a one-on-one. I'm going to tell you that already because I want us to, have that knowledge immediately. Samara, for those who are just meeting you today, why don't you just give us a little background about your training? You went to a shoebox and got a little bit of information and got an HR consultant out of the Cracker Jack box, right? Not
yeah.
quite. Yeah, give us a little bit of your extensive and impressive background.
Yeah, so big majority of my HR experience started out in the healthcare industry out of all industries. So heavily regulated industry already by nature. And I was there for about 10 years. Worked my way, I mean, worked for multiple like hospitals, health systems, corporate level, and then I went on to transition to work for a consultancy firm providing payroll, HR services, the whole people support, people admin side of things. And there I really found my passion, and I really got to see a day in the life of a business owner, right? I was exposed to so many things that I wasn't exposed in my corporate career. Businesses being hit with claims and lawsuits for things that larger organization would never occur because
Ever. Yeah.
they had an HR department that was mitigating that risk for them. And so I yeah, I've been working with small businesses for about 10 years now, and just love every single minute of it. And I do what I do because I just want to make sure small businesses avoid all those lawsuits and penalties that are so preventable, for the most part.
Yeah, they are, and you hit the nail on the head with that. Bigger companies don't get hit with these type of lawsuits, and if they do, they knew they were coming. They had a resource, they have the lawyers, etc., right? It's the small companies that don't have the knowledge of what they're actually being exposed to that is very problematic. So what we're going to do today, guys, is we're going to hit on three different areas. We're going to talk about AB5 because there's no way we cannot. Then we're going to talk about some of the requirements. Samara's going to actually probably shock me a little bit. She says some things are coming around the corner. She's going to tell me about contracts when you're hiring independent contractors. I'm still not really accepting that new law yet. So, yeah, well, and then we'll have some of the new HR laws for the hires. Samara, do you have any direction that you think, because you know the knowledge and might know what's the best way for us to start? Is there any of the three that you think we should start with first?
Um, Yeah, maybe we should start out with, for planning, like planning to hire
Yeah.
people. When you start out your business, right? You're maybe on your own, maybe you and your partner that start out the business, and then suddenly you hit a growth phase and you start hiring.
Yeah.
Um,
And you know what? I agree. And let's do that. That's perfect. But let's step one before, because at that point, your desired, my desired from a financial perspective is to hire an independent contractor so you
mhm,
don't have to commit to the wages and you don't have to commit. You can just bring them in. So I think we kind of got to start with AB5. So I'm going to
mhm,
pose this question to you. So I'm going to have this morning, I think I'm going to have a yoga studio. Okay. And so I got this yoga studio, and me and my partner that I started the yoga studio with were both we're yoga instructors, right? And so we've been handling the schedule and we've been doing great. But we've gotten a request for Sundays. and we don't do Sundays, right? Because we need to take one day off. So we got this great idea. We're just going to have one class, 1 hour class on a Sunday. We're already paying the rent. We already pay the electric. It makes total sense, Samara, right? We got people that want to sign up. It's not going to cost us anything extra. So we have this friend, Mary, and Mary doesn't work on Sundays, and she's going to come in and teach our 1 hour yoga class. Isn't that awesome? We're just going to pay her for the hour. We agreed upon amount. We're just going to write her a check, and that's going to be fine, right, Samara?
In yeah, not in California.
Ah,
That is,
not in California.
I was
Right
gonna
answer.
say,
Yeah, right
not in
answer.
California.
Not California. So let's talk. So, guys, I just painted a picture so you can see that I am just bringing somebody in even for 1 hour on a Sunday. Okay. So now Samara is going to tell us the rule that says why that's not okay in California and what that means I'd have to do. So let's take it from there to get somebody to understand that first level of growth where the difficulty lies.
Yeah. So AB5, little background around right before COVID-19, we had this new law that went into effect that really created a new test to classify someone as an independent contractor, right? So originally we had the previous test was known as the Borello test, some test that went into effect sometime in the 80s and really focused more on the exertion of control over the worker. So it would look at things like, are you scheduling them? Are they using your equipment? Are they using your email? Are they negotiating their rates or are you giving them a rate? All those things, right? So the exertion of control over the work being performed. AB5 created a new test, the ABC test. And this new test, in addition to the already existing test, this new test created 3 different prongs by which a company can classify a worker as an independent contractor. So it looks at, there's a component of exertion of control. So, the first component is whether or not the business or the hiring entity exerts control over the worker being performed in fact, and in fact, right? Not just in contract, but also in fact. Second prong is if they're providing services outside the line of the business, right? So in this case, in this example with the yoga studio, this person, Mary, she's going to be providing services that are in line with the business, right? So she wouldn't meet that criteria. And then the third criteria, or C, A, B, C, the third criteria is that the entity or the person being contracted is an established business or they have an established occupation. So if someone meets all 3 of those criteria, then they can potentially be an independent contractor. And I say potentially because there are a lot of exemptions from this ABC test, but when the exemption applies, they fall back on the Borello test.
Okay. You know, when I don't know if it's still on the website today because I haven't gone on the government website in a while, but when the ABC first came out on the government website back right after COVID around there, they gave examples of what they considered would apply for
Mhm.
the B part, meaning are they performing an activity in the daily course of the business, right? Which is what the yoga instructor is doing, right? And that was very telling to me because of the example they used. They said, if you had a bakery and someone was at home creating a recipe for you to use in your bakery, they
Mhm.
must be classified as an employee. If they were coming in to fix your computer, since you're not in the daily activities of computer, they could be an independent contractor. I think that really expressed how far they take it because I really wouldn't have thought somebody doing a one-off recipe to create the cakes
Yeah.
you're going to sell would be an independent contractor. I would have thought that would have been fine, and it's not. So it really does extend to any activities that you'd be performing. And I just wanted to bring that up because that B, that section B, is to me the one that killed the ability to hire an independent contractor. Because Samara, most small businesses I know want to hire a independent contractor specifically for the purpose to help out a growing business with an activity that's in the normal course of business.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And, this bill, like, I mean, this was like the talk of the town before
It
COVID
was.
hit, because it really made it impossible
Yeah.
to really hire someone as an independent contractor. I mean, when you look at all three criteria, it's nearly impossible for someone to pass that test,
It
right?
is nearly, and I want to walk through a couple of these. So, I was wondering, and where we're going to go now too, Samara, is, for from a legal perspective, and I'm saying this for the audience to understand, when a law is passed, because a lot of people don't realize this, and you correct me if I'm saying it incorrect in any way, Samara, but when laws are passed, they're the legal part of our law making system, whether it's in a state or in the United States, I'm sorry, on a federal level is what I meant to say, whether it's in a state or a federal, the law creating body creates a law, but the interpretation is through the courts to fully understand how the law is going to apply. Because the laws aren't written on purpose to be vague, but they do have a vagueness in them because we haven't seen how does it actually apply to all the unique situations. So precedence is basically a decision that was made in a court on a topic. And when we want to go to court and argue, that's the word we use as an EA, being able to represent clients through the IRS, I have to find precedents that support my argument. So precedents are really more important in many ways, I would say,
Mhm.
than the actual law because it says how the courts have decided in the past in the precedents. So I want to go through, kind of where the precedents are coming. If you have any idea, and you might be able to say, Samar, I don't know on this, but when they look at the daily activities, and this is something I'm hitting you with questions that I've been wanting to ask you as well. Do they go as far as to any administration help? Like, okay, I get it if they're yoga, but if I have Mary come in to help with the booking of clients, do they take that as considered also part of the daily activities?
They would.
They
Um,
would.
yeah, they would. I think in the past, talked about this example of someone actually that reached out, had a consultation with me through the SBDC, and she had a fashion design business,
Okay.
and along with that, she sold makeup, and so she had hired these models to model the makeup, wear the makeup, in particular, I think it was mascara, lipstick, and long story short, she got audited by EDD, and EDD determined that these models were or should have been her employees.
I can't
Uh,
even, I know that what happened. You talked to me about it, but I'm telling you, Samara, every time you tell me that story, I'm going to be in shock. I
yes,
would have never in
I
a
was in
million
shock
years.
too.
Yeah, I would have never. eh, And that you also mentioned something I think is really important because, like I said, on the show, we between ourselves, we talk about stuff, okay, guys? What ends up happening is, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I don't think EDD is necessarily knocking on every door and walking in and looking at the inside of the business. It's when someone complains, or what I find, Samara, is when an independent contractor mistakenly thinks they can apply for unemployment insurance and they put the company down. How do you see that EDD is being alerted? Have you had any insight from different people? The ones I see is the independent contractor applied for unemployment, and that's how EDD got noted about it.
Yeah, typically, I mean, you're absolutely right. Typically, it's if someone, say for example, in the yoga studio we were talking about, let's say Mary decided to, okay, well, I'm no longer going to be hired for classes, but you know what? I'm gonna apply for unemployment in the meantime that I look for another job.
Yeah.
And that's the way that ADD will catch it. Will say, oh, well, wait a minute. We don't have any wages reported under your social security number because, that's also part of like being an employer. When you become an employer, you got to report the wages, not only pay the payroll tax, but you also got to report wages for each employee to EDD because that's how they know how much benefit someone is going to get depending on the records that they have. And so they'll go through the records and find that, oh, wait a minute, there's no wages reported for this person. And they'll come knocking on the door and say, hey, yoga studio, we
Yeah.
have Mary that's applying for an employment, but we have no record. Like, tell us what's going on.
Exactly. And can I go on another little tangent here for a
Yeah,
second, Samara?
yeah,
This is why, and guys, you hear me talk about the importance of understanding correct nomenclature. I'm not trying to make everybody an English major, but where I'm going with this, Samara, is knowing that you're a sole prop, an LLC, an S corp, and I'll bring this full circle. When we started using slang words, gig economy, independent contractor is a classification for HR, not legal structure, right? If Mary knew whether she could call herself a gig economy, whether she called herself a 1099, if you want to call yourself a form, that's fine. It's kind of a weird thing, but okay. But if she knew she was a sole prop, she wouldn't have thought that she could apply for unemployment. And so I think too, our using incorrect terminology and teaching entrepreneurs and individuals this incorrect terminology adds to the confusion because when it comes down to the letter of the law, they are seeing, oh, you're a sole prop. You are not qualified for unemployment. Who hired you? So I think that's why it's real important for the entrepreneurs independent of the messaging to get back to what these words actually mean and
yeah.
entail.
Yeah, yeah. And really really to do the research, I would say, before they even think about bringing on someone as 1099, because it seems so easy, right? And if you're going to pay someone under $600, right,
Right,
the law doesn't require you to report them. So,
right.
I'm not, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to promote that here, but
Yeah, I know. 599.99, guys. We didn't say that,
that's
okay?
the magic number, guys.
Okay, now you got to get a new person, 599.99. You're out of here. Yeah, no, it's really true. It's true because then And don't you also, oh, jumping ahead. I want to stay with AB5 for a second here. Let me stay on this. I want to go with one more before we jump to another one. Okay, this is I always throw these at you, but you always pick up on. I'm going to ask you one that I think about and nobody's talking about. Okay, so say I get hired as an independent contractor. I'm technically okay to be an independent contractor or not, doesn't matter. But I don't feel comfortable. And tell me if Lori's being extreme. Okay, you can say, Lori, you're a little over the top. I don't feel comfortable when the company asks the person they hired to use their internal email system. Okay, I don't like people like I have gotten hired this from my private company, right? And
Mhm.
people, I've come in as an interim CFO. They wanted me to make it look like I was really internal CFO. I
Yeah.
have refused to use their email. I only use my corporation email because to me, that's using one of the tools. And I don't want to be classified as an employee because that is not what I am. So, am I being crazy here or am I being sane?
No, you're not. I mean, you're not. Essentially, they shouldn't be giving you like a company email because
Yes.
then you start blending in, right? And that's the issue.
Yes.
A lot of times too, people can override when they truly do have an independent contractor, they can override that classification by, as you were saying, setting precedents, right? Like if
Right.
you have a true independent contractor, but then they come to your office and they perform work. They use one of the computers or one of the desks there, and now they have a company email and they're printing from your printer. They're really starting to look or blend in with your employee population. And guess what? Likely at some point, they're going to be looked at more as an employee rather than an independent contractor.
And that's a true. Now, I could be wrong on this too, so you just tell me. But I believe the original Barella test came as a result in the 80s from the Microsoft, which had employees and independent contractors sitting next to each other. The independent contractors were fine until they didn't get stock options. And
Yes,
that's how this whole thing came in of blending and looking like, and Microsoft lost, had to give
yes,
them stock options. And that's where Barella came up. Am I remembering my
yes,
history
you
correct?
are. You
Yeah.
are. You're dead on. You're very dangerous, Lori.
Okay. Everybody says, how do you know all this? I'm like, I'm old, guys. I've been around a very long time. Okay, now that I've hit on some of the details of B of AB5, I want to jump on C, and I'm going to get even more hard on this one. So, guys, as a reminder, C is if they are an independent company, right? So if someone is hiring me, and I'm not doing the normal activities, I'm doing CFO type stuff, I have to prove that I have my own company, which according to the law, you have to have your own license, you have to have your own registration, you have to have all this in place. I have to have existing clients elsewhere. I have to be searching for clients. And that is under the term that some of you guys may have heard, a bona fide business. Okay, Samara, I'm hearing some really bizarre things lately. For some reason, and tell me if there's any logic behind this, I'm getting calls from people who, I hate to say this, but they're applying for some government grants and contracts. And the government grants and contracts are requiring them to form a corporation. Now, I'm not saying LLC. I'm
Mhm,
saying corporation, and
mhm.
they're saying that you must form as a corporation. And I've heard people now say if you're a corporation, that more substantiates an independent contractor relationship. And I could see kinda because the legal setup of a corporation, you're an employee of the corporation. I can see where there's some difference. But has there been anything in writing on AB5 that a legal status organized as a corporation is better than an LLC in satisfying Part C?
No, I haven't seen anything come through
I
in
think
that
it's just another
regard.
crazy thing that people are coming up with and
Yeah.
believing to be true, like forming the LLC.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that. People think that so as long as I'm formed as an LLC, then, I'm my own business and, I'm not an independent contractor or they can't. And I have heard of places that have asked people to create a business structure as a LLC, you know.
Yeah, I have
Um,
to.
yeah, I have heard too, but I haven't heard about the corporation side of it. Uh,
It's a new one, and whenever
yeah.
something comes up, I know somebody's been spewing something on social media. I don't see the validity in it because I don't think the legal structure makes you bona fide
Yeah,
anything. I
it
think they're
doesn't.
looking at the actual structure in the entire company. Do you have lots of clients? Do you have that? And a lot of people are saying, okay, I don't want to hire you as a 1099, take any risks, so you got to form an LLC now, and all's going to be okay. And it's
No, it's not.
it's absolutely
Yeah.
not. So before we live, we got some questions we're going to go over, but before we leave AB5, and this is another thing you've told me, but I refuse to believe this is true, so I keep taking it out of my brain. But I think when I pay an independent contractor, I have to like register with EDD or franchise tax board or something. Look, I refuse to remember this because you're telling, I go ahead, tell me because I don't want to put this in my memory because I just can't believe it. So what?
Yes. Yes. So when businesses hire an independent contractor, they have an obligation to report them to EDD. So they also, a normal employee gets reported, right? When they get hired, they get reported to EDD within 20 days. But the same rule also applies to independent contractors. And the reason behind it is because they are trying to collect or trying to find people that may be behind with child support payments. And there is this like nationwide registry that
Right.
they put people through to find if people are actually having some income. So it is a requirement within 20 days of engaging or hiring an independent contractor or an employee. They must be reported to EDD for that reason.
See, to me, okay, so now like my company's incorporated in South Dakota. If I hire an employee, I have to follow that rule on the National Register. I get that. Totally get that. They don't have a rule about paying independent contractors and having to be registered.
Mhm.
Okay, me, the Lori suspecting and being also, okay, conspiracy theory. If you have to register with the EDD, the minute I'm going to pay Mary for Sunday, I'm subjecting myself to the knowledge that I just paid Mary as an independent contractor. Isn't that okay? I can't help it, Samara.
Yeah.
I know. Isn't that also opening me up to possibly being known for an audit?
Yeah,
Okay,
potentially.
yeah, I like that. Yeah, Samara's like,
Potentially,
yeah, Lori.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then remember when tax season, right? Like you have to give them the 1099,
right,
right? You have to
right.
file it with the IRS, and
Yeah.
that can also be questionable.
Do you know I actually saw someone who was paying, this wasn't due to AB5, but they were paying independent contractors quite a lot in their company, hadn't 1099 and got audited just because of the way that the metrics came out within the company. You've got all these independent contractors, how are you paying for them? Do you really have these in expense? So
Mhm.
independent contractors and 1099s can be a flag for the IRS as well. Okay, so I know you kind of peeked at some of the questions. I'm not going to go through each one. I'm going to kind of sum things up. So I'm going to answer a few and then I'm going to let you jump in and I'll ask you, a question on that. But Anonymous was saying if you're a 1099 and you can't apply for unemployment, what can you apply for? And I just have to say it this way, Samara, I'll let you answer, but this is Lori. Guys, you're a business owner. And at that point you don't get unemployment, so it's kind of, if you want to be secure to get unemployment, you can set up an S corp and pay in profits as an employee, or you can become an employee. But sole props, LLCs, they do not pay into the unemployment fund, therefore they do not collect unemployment. There was situations during the COVID pandemic unemployment, disaster unemployment, those were specifically funded through the federal government. But a 1099 is actually a sole prop. A gig worker is actually a sole prop, or you can be an LLC, because 1099 is really an HR form and it's whether you're an employee or you're an independent contractor, but legally you're a sole prop and LLC, you don't qualify for unemployment. So you just have to know that that's one of those embedded risks that we take when we start a company. And if Mary works just one day, and I'm going to let you take it from there, but Mary's got to be paid as a temporary employee. And I'm going to come back to Marisol's later, but tell us about the, and this goes perfect because it gets set up with the part about hiring somebody and having a budget, Samara. So let's talk about, I just consulted Samara. Luckily, I hired her before I hired Mary, and she told me I can't hire Mary. So I said, okay, how do I pay Mary then? There you go, Samara.
Wow. I'm sorry.
What do I do now, Samara?
So what is it again? So
Yeah,
we're
Mary.
paying we're
So
paying
I
Mary,
got
but
to pay
Mary's still
Mary.
we're paying Mary, but Mary's still an independent contractor, right?
No, I'm going to follow the rule and make Mary an employee. And so Mary's going to work only on Sunday at first, but eventually she may work
Okay,
Monday through
gotcha.
Friday. So first,
Okay.
Mary's going to be an employee. We're going to get in the financial part of me affording Mary. Right now, I've got big eyes. I'm going, I'm going to hire Mary. I'm not realizing whether I can afford Mary to be hired or not, right?
This is
I'm
how
just
it
going to say,
goes.
okay, what do I got to do now to do it
So
legally?
yeah, I mean, now that you're gonna hire Mary, you gotta set up your payroll, right? So
Okay.
you gotta then we'll talk about our lovely friends at EDD. You must
Yes.
register as an employer with EDD, and set up your payroll. And there's quite a few steps that go into it. People think it's like, okay, just pay them whenever, but it's
No.
not. There's some rules, right? That you have to set up a structure, meaning like you have to define several things. You got to define the workday for overtime purposes. You got to define the work week also for overtime purposes. And then you got to pick a schedule that you're going to be following to pay them, right? So you're not going to pay them on Monday one week and then Sunday the following week. Or you got to pay them within 7 days of the end of your pay period, whatever you choose that to be. And actually, I have found some businesses that would pay their employees like 10 days after the close of the pay period, or like even a week after, even like 2 weeks after. Now,
That's a red flag.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is the stuff people don't know, right? I mean, I'm going to hire them, I'm going to pay them. This is what works for me and my
Right.
finances. But there are some rules to follow. So those would be the first few steps to set up your payroll. Make sure you're going to have a structure, and then running payroll to pay Mary on a either weekly, which I don't recommend doing, bi-weekly basis, ideally. Yeah, that would be the way to go.
Yeah, and I'm also, I want to just add in this quickly. I'm kind of a, stickler on this too. I personally will only go through like an ADP or a Paychex because payroll is its own animal, and
Mhm.
California has a lot of laws, especially we're not even going into Cal Savers. We're not even going to touch that little animal right now, but it's got its own complexities, and I have seen people get in big trouble by hiring even Augusto, and they didn't know some of the California laws and they didn't abide by. And what people don't understand, and I've literally seen this happen, is if you mess up on payroll and you made a mistake, it can come under, this is harsh, civil liability and fraud.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's very easy to make a mistake when it comes to pay processing wages because there's so many rules,
Yep.
and just calculating the rate that you should be paying the employee, it's its own animal.
Yep.
Because, for overtime purposes, for example, if you pay someone like their hourly rate, but you also give them a commission or a bonus, or they somehow make like a different rate working hours, you can't just pay them based off of their original rate,
Right.
the base rate. You got to now calculate what they consider the regular rate of pay, which is a blend of all the compensation they got. So
Yeah, I know it's crazy. I did a lot of overseeing the payroll, and I liked Paychecks. I used because they were less at the time expensive, but ADP, I'm not saying they're perfect, but at least they have representatives for each of the states so they can double check you're
Mhm.
following the state law. Because the company I came in as an interim CFO was paying the employees many days behind. I can't remember.
Oh
And
wow,
and we went to ADP and they caught that immediately.
yeah.
So it really is, and the company that got a fraud statement against them didn't submit the proper payroll. They collected it and had a glitch and didn't submit the correct one. So the owner, his two daughters who were involved in payroll as well, all have civil liability, fraud, and liens on their house.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
very, very bad situation
wow.
came to me afterwards. So, payroll's nothing to play with at either. One of the questions that people ask, and I was thinking about this, so I'm going to jump this up real quick, and Tara asked this, is how does it work if I hire someone through a temp agency? Let's talk about that. Can I
Yeah, yeah,
work, can
yeah.
I get married through a temp agency and be okay?
You can get married through a temp agency and be okay. So the temp agency, so essentially it would be um, kind of like a joint employment type of situation when you hire someone through a staffing agency. So the staffing agency, it's their employer, right? That's their employee. You're paying the staffing agency for their work, but there's also some shared liability when they come and work for you at your location. Um, but you can hire someone through a temp agency and not really have to take on all the liability that comes with hiring an employee, like having workers' comp, or submitting the payroll taxes, things like that, because the staffing agency is doing that on their end, or should be doing that on their end. So
What's interesting is years ago, I'm sorry, keep going.
oh no, no, I was gonna say, that would be the way to go. There are some things that you would need to also keep an eye for, that you're responsible for, like providing a, hostile-free, harassment-free work environment, and the safety rules that you're abiding by. But other than that, the staffing agency takes the brunt of the responsibility of the employee.
Yeah, and actually we were thinking the same thing, as what I was going to say is Years ago, the mentality for a business owner was that hiring temp employees was so expensive, you wanted to avoid it. Now, I haven't done a recent calculation, but Samara, I got to believe when you figure out all of the rules and everything you have to follow, especially just hiring Mary and the cost of hiring through a temp, it's got to be pretty neck to neck that the temp
Mhm.
agency may be the best way for you to temporarily grow until it makes sense to add enough people on to warrant the payroll and all the things that you're having to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That
Yeah,
would be a way to go. Um, that's one solution or one workaround, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah.
AB5, so you make sure you are in compliance, but you also do have the staff that you need to grow.
I find AB5, and I've said this to you every time I say this to clients every day, very troubling. I feel as though the way that a client would just kind of, or business, I should say, as client might, but a way a business just kind of just starts to jump and test the water is to hire an independent contractor to help them out with the daily activities. And I feel like AB5 has really put that wrench into it. It
Mhm.
just really
Mhm.
has made a difficulty on that. But let's go ahead and shock me. What is going on with the contracts? And guys, what I'm saying now is say I am hiring an independent contractor. I legally can hire an independent contractor. AB5 is not an issue in this scenario, okay? AB5 is fine. So in the olden days, in my world, I just hired them. I negotiated with the contractor so I knew what we were going to pay. We were in agreement. It could be a handshake. It could be, okay, I'll give you, $5 for this. I'll give you 10. I'll do whatever, I'll pay you for this web design 1,000. And, then they gave me an invoice and I paid them when, I respectfully paid them. I try to pay them on time, but I may or may not have. That was
Yeah.
the olden days. It's not that way anymore because it was always I was taking a risk hiring them. They were taking a risk. We were two businesses having a private business contractual agreement. And the only reason that contract would come up into a government type situation is if there was a conflict and one of us sued each other. That was how my world was. How is the world now?
Well, so the world now, as of January 1 of 2025, requires that employers or businesses hiring an independent contractor have a written contract that spells out several things. So it must spell out the rate of pay, also the scope of work, the timeline of when the work is going to be performed, and the most important thing, when the payment is going to be due. And if an agreement leaves out the payment date, it is assumed under the law that the payment is due within 30 days of the completion of the work.
Now, where is this law overarching? I remember at one point, and I think I'm behind the times, Samara, it was just in the LA City. It's not in just LA City anymore, or where's
Yeah,
this
this
law now?
this is now California adopted this. Yeah.
State
So
law. It's just state law.
they liked LA City's requirements. So yeah, City of Los Angeles adopted this contract ordinance a couple years ago. I wouldn't say like 2 years ago.
Right.
With the same type of requirements. And then California, the entire state adopted it as of the beginning of this year. So now it applies to doing business in the entire state as well.
I'm going to ask a totally silly question, and you may have like no answer. It's just more my reaction to this. How many businesses even know about this? Guys in the chat, how many of you knew this existed? And who is actually supervising this? I mean, I have to believe most people don't even know about this.
Yeah, most people don't know about this. So this is part of why I went into business, Lori, because people don't know what they don't know, right?
Right.
As I mentioned, as a small business owner, you go into business and things are going well, you're looking to grow, and suddenly you need a team, right? You're not going to be able to do it on your own sometimes. So when you hire that team, um, you want to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into and you're complying with the regulations, right? For the most part, I'd say,
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you avoid getting penalized $10,000 because you don't have workers' comp insurance for people that are your employees but misclassified as independent contractors, right? So there are, quite a few things that go into hiring employees, and there's so much lack of information out there. Like you say, who knows there's nobody spreading the word out, other
Oh, in
than,
fact, in the
people
chat, we
like
haven't
me.
got anybody that says they knew. Nobody, everybody's like responding in the chat. I didn't know, I didn't know, I didn't
Yeah.
know. You
Yeah.
know, it's interesting. So I'm we're not we're not being recorded and not being live broadcast right now. So what I'm about to say is only you and I hear it. But you know what it reminds me of? Okay, you're gonna laugh at Lori saying things like you always do, right? Sometimes, and you and I were talking about this before the show, I feel as though it's gotten almost impossible to follow every single law. You don't even know a lot of them. And, I laugh around, I say, it's almost like politicians claim to fame, like, rich people put their name on benches, politicians put it on a bill, and you got so many laws, it's almost impossible to follow them all. And especially if I was just going to have Mary come in a couple Sundays to see if it fills, right? And, it kind of reminds me of this analogy. Okay, this is like so inappropriate, right? But if you're going to have a dead body in the trunk of your car, don't leave your tail light out. Told you, Tamara. And don't let the arm hanging out of the back of the truck, right? So sorry guys, it was the best I had today, right? But I think there's something to be said about your exposure. You have to be very conscious, and I'm not saying it on the edge of not being aware, but Marisol, I love you, Lori. Thank you. But I mean, you have to really look at the exposure. If you have a ton of Marys coming into your yoga studio and they're teaching every single day and they're all over the place, I might go, oh my God, I better do something about it. If I have Mary come in one Sunday and Mary's my best friend and say, Mary, here, I'm going to pay you. Maybe you just say, I'm going to test Mary. And I personally am acknowledging I have a dead body in the car, but I'm driving out in the country. All my taillights are in, and I think I'm good. Okay. But if it changes, I better change my way of being. You almost have to have, and this guy's ties into Lori's corner. You have to have this weird level of discernment.
Yeah.
This weird level of discernment.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
Some
terrible topic to comment on. Do you want to comment on anything?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, something I wish, right, if I had a magic wand and,
Right, right.
something I wish they would have incorporated into the law is like leaving a little room for businesses to, sort of have a trial period where they can have independent contractors for like 6 months, maybe,
Yes.
for a year, maybe like the first year as a startup, right? You want to make sure that the business, takes off.
Yeah.
And you want to bring in some people to help. And so I wish there would have been like a carve out, something like that. I don't think necessarily it's all bad. And I think that there are ways to work around the law. So like staffing agencies is, a potential solution, right? But I wish they would go back and maybe carve out a little bit to say, if you're a startup, you have like a year or two
Yeah.
to have independent contractors, without having to abide by AB5 or
I agree.
ABC.
During the fires, I was in a lot of political sittings because we're talking about, what was going on, right? And so I was in a political sitting with a bunch of chamber members, let's just say that, right? And they were asking me about the difficulties with the businesses in the fire area. Well, I couldn't help myself, right? So at the end, they go, do you have any other comments? I said, yeah, if you really want to make it easy on businesses, why don't you guys get with the politicians and talk to them about reconsidering AB5 or
Mhm.
modifying? And there was 20 chamber members or something. I don't remember. I'm talking about Chamber of Commerce members
Mhm.
and stuff like that. They were all, it ain't going to happen. ain't gonna happen. They love that law. So that's just something on that can. Now I want to make sure in the time we have left that I make this comment, and I know Xiomara, you were talking about this as well, but I'm talking about it from a finance perspective. And that is, I believe that small companies have to rethink what they've been fed to believe, that a sign of growth is you are getting so busy that you hire someone, and when you hire someone, it shows that you're growing and becoming successful. I do financial analysis. You know, I do that modeling all the time, where I look at the core structure, the cost structure of the company, and I see that the company isn't even selling at a high enough price to pay for the expenses and be profitable. And in actuality, the only money the owner is making or is keeping them from having to put more on their credit card is because they're performing the work. If they then hire someone, they have money going out they didn't even have. And then comes the thing I always say, more tired and more broke. So I think that it always was important to do a financial analysis of a cost structure to make sure it even makes sense to hire the first employee. But now, with the small companies being saddled with all of these rules as well, and the high cost of rent and expenses, that they really need to look at perhaps decreasing sales. Guys, I just said that, decreasing sales, losing customers, firing the customers, and actually selling at higher amounts rather than plunging immediately into that first employee. I think that should be said, and I'm glad I said it. I will let you comment on it now.
Yeah, I really think that's important to know, to make sure that when you're gonna hire someone, you have done your research as to what it entails, right? Most people, as I mentioned, they just kind of are growing, bringing in help, right? And so and so, or my neighbor, or my friend, or someone they know, oh, they can help me in the business, right? But do your research, what it entails to actually hire an employee, because becoming an employer is comes with a lot of responsibility, and also cost, as you're talking, like there's definitely a lot of costs you're going to need to plan for workers' compensation, depending what industry you're in, right? That's going to determine
Yeah.
the rate that you're going to get. Payroll tax that you're going to have to file or pay on the wages. And there's also other benefits you're going to need to provide to the employees. Retiring or retirement plan. If not, if you haven't registered with Count Savers,
Right. Yeah,
one of
that's
the
a whole,
things.
I've had
Yeah.
accounting people come on and talk about the difficulty in getting that accounting correct and the setups on that. That's a whole other animal. Okay, I got a positive spin.
Okay, good.
He wasn't expecting that, right?
Good.
Okay. It's a long shot here, but follow me. Okay, everybody in the audience, you can say, Lori, I'm following you. I'm picking up what you're putting down, or I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, you ready? Sit back and get my analogy here. Okay, now what we talked about is hiring the first person can be very problematic, right? But we do know, if you are a bona fide business person, where maybe I am a temp service for Mary's, or maybe I'm Mary and I'm also, selling my services to other people who have just gyms that want a yoga instructor. I can have all these aspects, right? So I think what it also does is it starts to create a need for more small, independent solopreneurs, sole props, solopreneurs, not an LLC unless you need to be, but a sole prop solopreneur, right? That sell their services, and we build our bigger companies through many small companies selling to each other. So, in other words, you don't have the big corporations. People don't start a company to grow and leave a legacy and all that. Instead, you have a lot of smaller companies that are now selling between themselves, and you actually have more little small companies in existence that are great self-propelled units. They don't have employees. They're just being companies that are selling their services to each other in different ways. And we bring the power and the control back to the people.
Wow, Lori, that that was wow. You just
I
dropped
mean,
the gem right there. Yes.
is some validity to what I just said, Samara?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
I know when we, like I said, I'm old. I went through that time where we went vertical integration, and you started to build all these big companies, and then you went, no, we're going to outsource everything to China and all that, right? Well, I think there's the ability to have, even with like I talk about the tariffs are a benefit to small companies because now they can compete on a price playing field, right? So I think as much as this can have complexity, it also can be a golden opportunity for solopreneurs and small companies. I'm not saying, 50 employees, I'm saying small companies to really start having a crucial component of the business economic environment.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's so like out the box thinking. But yeah, I love it,
I,
Yeah.
I do. I think it's a new wave that's upon us, and I think we can either sit back and go, okay, government says I have to hire somebody I can't afford to, but I'm gonna, and then I'm not gonna have any money, or you can say, how do we work around all this and make the power come back to me? And I'm all about we the people having the power. We the people, the small companies. I think it's all about that. Now, I know there's some new laws coming up. We didn't even get to that, so I know you're also got a webinar coming up. I'm sure you're actually going into detail on that and will. So how can people find out more that we didn't even get the chance to cover today?
Yeah, I mean, you can find out more. You can follow me on social media, Solvit underscore HR. I do a lot of posts there where I share some of the latest and greatest things that are coming up. I'm also going to have a webinar. This is like not related to AB5, but more related to what's currently going on with the ICE rates and preparing businesses for audits and how staffing is also being impacted by the rate. So providing some resources and assistance for businesses to just make sure that they keep their business running, right? Gotta keep operating. And what else? What else do I have? I think that's pretty much it for
As
the
well as always the opportunity to go through the Pasadena SBDC and book
SBDC.
a one-on-one with Samara to discuss it further. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm going to be launching a new series. I'm like tentatively looking at September, probably once a month. It's going to be Ask an Expert series where we are going to just get maybe a panel. It's maybe going to be an hour and a half long and really delve into these kind of discussions. So that way I can have, small biz talk. You came on there, you were a star, you're going to come over and we're going to get into even some more details on this. Because what I find is that, webinars are great, but a lot of times what people want to do is they just want to hear these in-depth discussions because they're
Mhm.
really about practical applications rather than just learning and the kind of things that people don't talk about, like what
Right,
happens when Mary comes in on Sunday, etc.
right. But to address their questions, the pressing questions, the burning questions they may have had always, but didn't know where to go and ask and get an answer, so that's
Exactly.
awesome.
Yeah, so that's coming up tentatively. September got a lot going on, but I really want to have the ability for small companies to be more exposed to this type of intellect from experts that know what they're talking about, not the social media wannabes, right? So I'm gonna call them. I just called them that, the social media wannabes. That's Lori's word today. Yeah. If anybody says, "Are you doing social media videos?" I go, "No, I'm not a social media wannabe. I'm the real deal." Okay, guys, we got to end it. So, Tamara, I just want to thank you as always for always coming on and being here and supporting us. I mean, the conversations are so intense, and you can tell from the questions. Every time I think we have touched on AB5 enough, I can tell from the response in the audience, we have to keep coming on and keep talking about it because it's
Yeah.
just crucial. It's just crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be on and if people have questions, they can either book me through the SBDC or they can go on my website, solvithr.com and book a consultation there too. So happy to answer. I know this brings a lot of questions, so I'm gonna make sure people get answers to
It's
those.
one of those topics we created more questions than we answered because some people, I'm sure there's some people you can tell me in the chat are probably like, What? What are you talking about? I didn't even know AB5 exists. Mary's been working on Sundays for the last 3 years."
Yes, Yes, yes,
Okay,
for
Sadie,
sure.
we can go on forever. I'm going to bring you back in to close it down. Now, remember, Sadie's going to stay here. So that means all the information for Xiomara, my email in case you want to reach out to me. Xiomara, if you know anybody that wants to be a guest on the show, let them know. I'm booking for mid-August and on. And with that, I think I'm just going to say, Sadie, was that not a lot of discussion?
I mean, wow, like that's all I can say. I mean, the questions, the chat, everything, where I definitely, this is like that segue, right? Where like Ask an Expert, Ziamora's got to be on there. I like, there probably have to be a 2 hour show for her.
It definitely will. I mean, we like my whole list. And one last comment on Marisol. Nope, you can't claim ignorance and beg for forgiveness. The government does not allow. You know what? I'll tell you how that works. Okay, I got one more comment. Like the things I say. I'll tell you how that works in CFO world, especially in tax world. We identify the law. We identify the penalty. We figure out the interest we made on the money not paying the penalty, and beg for forgiveness is okay, fine, you caught me, here's the money. That's the only way you intelligently beg for forgiveness. In other words, you have a knowledge, you make a conscious choice, you make a discernment, and you get ready to pay the penalties if you get caught. That's called life. How about that, Samara?
I love that, I love that. And to add to that, as you mentioned, as HR people, I think a lot of times we just get so hung up on like, making sure people are compliant and follow the law and you can't like deviate from it. But, my approach is like I will provide the options to my clients and the ramifications for each one, and they get to decide which way to go. You
Yeah.
know, they know their business the best, and I'm just there to provide information and make sure that hey, if that's the route they want to go and pay a penalty, that's worth it for them. They're gonna get a great return on investment, not following, not go for it,
Yeah.
go
Sometimes,
for it.
and yeah, I was telling Tamara before, the way I look at life is there is really no laws. There is suggestions with possible repercussions. Some of them I'm really going to try to follow. I'm going to try not to kill anybody in my life. I think that's a good one, right? I'm going to follow that one the best I can.
I'm gonna go check your trunk after this, Lori.
You're right. I'm on a theme. I got dead bodies in the trunk. Oh my God. But I think you have to look at that. And that's, people know that that's how companies look at it. So we're not saying break any laws. We're saying have an awareness of what
Yeah,
you're doing. That's what we're
yeah,
really saying is have a full awareness of the law and have awareness of the choices you're making. Okay. Thank
totally.
you, frequent flyers, for being here. Thank you, my great audience that are always like writing fascinating things in the chat and the Q&A. Sometimes I see them and it just makes me smile and laugh. And if you were new to the show, hey, this is what you get. So plan on joining us next week for Small Biz Talk. Your host, Lori Williams. Thanks again, Samara. Sadie is going to
Thank
be here
you.
to make sure everybody gets the contact information that they need. See you next week. Bye, everybody.
Hi,
Bye.
everyone. Alrighty, guys, I will be here. There is a survey for you guys because you know how it be. If we don't let the government know how awesome we are, we cannot bring this federally funded programming for you. So if you have not filled out that survey, please let us know. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat window. I will be here. Let me know if you need anything. Thank you, Richard, for that amazing survey. Like I said, folks, we are just here to help, but we just got to let folks know that, hey, we're doing good over here. So we just got to pass this information along so we can keep bringing the show to you. Alrighty, guys, I will be here. Let me know if you need anything, okay?